All right, so I'm going to be going over match 3, the first game. I'm going to be using the replay function. I haven't really used this much in the past, but unfortunately, the game 4, or match 4, the first game in match 4. But yeah, not super familiar with using this function, but since unfortunately I had a recording issue, which I think I figured out, and I don't think is going to be an issue going forward. At least I hope not. Um, so I'm going to do my commentary this way for a change. So, first of all here, this was a pretty easy keep. If this was a 6-card hand and it was missing an Aether Vial, it would be a snap keep. And, like at the end of the day, this does kind of what your standard Merfolk deck will do of almost any different variation. I pretty much feel like I have to keep here because if this hand isn't good enough, then it doesn't exactly bode well for Merfolk in general. And as we'll see, actually, this hand is not bad. So I do keep it. I feel good. I've got card advantage. I've got a Lord. I've even got a Dismember to deal with their threats. I do Dismember the Soulscar Mage here. There is some merit to trying to keep it up for Loris. But really, if they start getting going too early, particularly with these 1-drop Prowess creatures, which ironically are worse than Abbot, because you can't block them as easily because of their high toughness. It can be too much of a problem. So sometimes I feel like you have to hope that they don't draw a 3rd land, or just hope that you draw another one, or can otherwise deal with the situation later on. So here they play Abbot, and they play Kroxa, so it was pretty obvious to ditch the Aether Vial because that that was dead anyway under Aether Vial. Under the Chalice. Okay, now, spoiler alert, that playing that island right there is going to end up being a critical misplay. And it's funny because at the time it didn't seem like that, but that is a very that is a very unfortunate misplay right there, and we'll see why shortly. Sometimes maybe it's worth it to anyway. Sometimes these games, you can learn a lot from the misplays. But I didn't particularly need to be watching this again to know. It became pretty clear right here, like they played the lightning bolt at end of turn. They cracked the fetch land. They had just enough to crack flashback Dismember, and I was heartbroken when I realized I had to discard the Dismember, and if I had only kept that island, previously, like a couple turns ago, I could have made an attack here, either brought them down to 2 or cleanly dealt with Kroxa. Of course, at the time, it was pretty obvious I was going to keep Dismember. I wasn't particularly threatened by the Abbot. I knew that I could block it pretty easily, or trade with it on the attack. So I was saving that for Luris, and I was really fixated with Luris. I didn't quite see that the Kroxa was gonna get me like this, but it definitely could have. I definitely should have seen it. It was a misplay, no doubt. I'm not sure if the sounds are recording. Honestly, it's a little tricky to get the recording off of these replays. Sometimes it's weird. Sometimes I just see the game screen, the game log screen instead of the actual window with the game. Anyway, yeah, that's the game right there. Essentially, the game is I didn't hold a land for when they inevitably would escape Kroxa, and I lost my essentially my ticket to dealing with either Kroxa or Loris, and lost the game. That heartbreaking, but sometimes you learn more from your losses than your wins, and hopefully that's the case there. I'll be covering the next game and go over that too. All right, match 4, game 2, again using the replay function. So first we have this hand, which I'm not sure why it really goes so quickly there, but basically it just had 2 Dismembers and a bunch of lands and an Aether Vial or 2. Unfortunately, it's just been incredibly hard to get it to freeze on that exact frame, and there doesn't seem to be a back function If I'm missing something, please let me know. But this is actually my fourth or maybe fifth recording attempt, and I think trying to get that first hand captured in time with how quickly that scrolls by, that's almost sort of like a game in and of itself. And frankly, I think it's a game that I'm not as good at as Magic. So, um, yeah. So sorry about that, but yeah, this hand is believe it or not, I do keep it. And as you saw, I bottomed the Smuggler's Copter. My reasoning here was, look, I've got the Chalice. That is going to be the main game-breaking card here. Of course, they're more prepared for it in game two, but that doesn't change the fact that the core of their deck, sometimes it's important to just acknowledge when things are not necessarily the best for your deck, and that gives you the best chance to actually win. And for me at least, in my experience, when I play against Prowess, if I'm frank, the core of their deck, and it doesn't matter whether it's traditional mono red or Rakdos or blue red or or even the Obosh Prowess list I play, typically the core of the deck just lines up very well with the core of our deck. But Chalice flips that completely over, so much so that I felt priced in, on a mulligan to keep this hand. My logic in pitching the Smuggler's Copter was, look, I've got a lot of action on only 1 mana, believe it or not, because I've got the Force of Negation, probably pitching the Brazen Borrower. Hopefully not, because it'd be nice to bounce a 1-drop under Chalice, if I can get to that. But I do have, 2 Dismembers I could fire off, and a Force of Negation, possibly pitching Brazen Borrower, maybe another blue card if I draw that. In other words, what I'm just trying to say is I've got a lot of action. I can afford to miss a turn or two, of land drops. Maybe I can only afford to miss 1 turn of land drops, but the fact that I'm not completely out of the game, missing at least 1 land drop, it makes me believe that I can't quite pass up this possibility of having a game-changingly powerful 2-drop play in the form of Chalice. So that's my reasoning. I think Chalice would be, I think my Chalice is very, very good in this matchup, and yeah, let's see how this goes. So they play a Soulscar Mage here. I do obviously have to dismember this. It's efficient use of mana. Yeah, I can't afford to take too much damage too early on. So this one though, I do pass on if I remember correctly. And I did pitch the Aether Gust. My thinking was, I'm kind of playing towards sticking Chalice and then bouncing Soulscar Mage, and Brazen Borrower is just strictly better than Aether Gust at that because, number one, I get a 3/1 flying in addition to bouncing the creature, which is pretty good, it's card advantage. But number two, Aether Gust lets them put it on the bottom of their library, which gives them a redraw to, drawing a non-1-mana spell or even Cold's Gone Command or something that can deal with Chalice. So it just made sense that Aether Gust was the better card to ditch. Yeah, and so I guess briefly just sideboarding, I sided out three Aether Vials for three Aether Gusts, and I sided out 4 look at my sideboard quick. And I sided out oh sorry, I sided out 3 Smuggler's Copters for the 3 Aether Gusts, and I sided out and I sided out 4 Spreading Seas for 4 Force of Negations. Spreading Seas can possibly cut them off black mana, and I did give consideration to Croxa specifically, given last game. But overall, like overall, the main difficulty I find is keeping the 1-drop Prowess creatures under control, and to a lesser extent Abbott and Loris. So unfortunately, something had to go. I couldn't quite cut more Merfolk because I rely on those to turn Silvergill Adept on, and yeah, and Brazen Borrower actually is pretty good against Crocs. I just didn't have it last game. I did draw a bunch of lands at the end there too. So anyway, so here, that's how I sideboarded. That's why I had the Aether Gust. That's why I had the Force of Negation. Unfortunately, I did not draw my second land on curve. But, I was somewhat prepared. I mean, I do have the 2 dismembers. I do have the other dismember. I chose not to use it, though, because I still am worried about Luris, or maybe Croxa or something else. And of course, Chalice. I can play that on 1, and then I have Brazen Borrower to possibly bounce it, back to their hand, and hopefully get locked under Chalice, and then basically act as a 2 for 1. Um, so that was my logic there. Um, of course, eventually I will have to draw another land, though. Yeah, Clinging to Dust isn't too bad, but they, of course, they are firing off a lot of their 1-drops. It would have been nice to shut them off. If I think I do just remember the Abbot here. I draw my 1 Aether Vial. It's kind of getting heartbreaking. I mean, the Aether Vial, I guess, is better than nothing, but, I don't even really want to be filing in the Brazen Borrowers, so this is definitely problematic. And if I remember correctly, I still don't draw another land. So at this point, I know the game's pretty much over. I mean, I play for the insane, unlikely possibility that somehow I can beat their inevitable Luris with Recurring Seal of Fire, but in reality, it's over. And here, yeah, I'm interested in Heartless Act. Apparently, they can play this even with no creatures in play, and then they finish me off with Seal of Fire. So, heartbreaking. I think the where this went wrong though was in game 1 with the Croxa mistake. I don't actually think this was a mistake. I don't actually feel particularly bad about how I played this matchup. If anybody does think that I went wrong somewhere here in this matchup, and most likely I'm guessing, um, it might be the mulligan decision. But remember, I did mulligan to 6. I had Chalice. I did have a lot of play. That admittedly was not that's not extremely clear cut that was right. This game, unfortunately, I mean, this match unfortunately did not work out. But my analysis is at least as of right now focused firmly on the first game and the unfortunate not holding an extra land for Croxa, which turned out to be fatal, and also didn't manifest immediately. That happened, a couple turns later. But that's important. Sometimes a misplay isn't apparent until a couple turns later. Um, if I could have won game 1, maybe I could have had a game 3, and I don't know that actually this deck is extremely favorable, because actually the Rakdos version in particular, it has Koligon's Command. This version has Croxa, which gives them a lot of game even under Chalice, as we saw. Maybe it's even possible even with Chalice, maybe they're favored. I do think I'm at least favored. But to be honest, I'm actually not sure how much I am favored. I do feel favored, but they do actually have a surprisingly a large amount of game, even under Chalice. For this Rakdos version in particular, I find that the blue-red and all mono-red versions, including my own Obosh version, have significantly less game than this red-black version in particular. That's maybe that is definitely a point in favor of the Rakdos version, but I of course have my version because it's I feel like it's less susceptible to almost anything else but Chalice. Um, but this Rakdos version does seem particularly well set up to deal with Chalice, and they do take it from us, and that's just how it goes sometime. So yeah, I'll go over the next games. Yeah, so you know, um, yeah, I'll show how that goes.